Hello and welcome to another video. This is going to be something a little bit different from what I normally do for my Saturday videos, but I hope it's something you really enjoy. It's something that I've been wanting to try for a while, and if you do enjoy it, I will be doing more of these in the future. This is going to be a dedicated themed reading vlog, so I'm going to be reading BookTuber's least favourite books, which I am very excited about. I thought it would be a fun idea to just try something a little bit new for my reading and also see whether I like or dislike the books that my booktube friends do not like. So I am going to be splitting this video into two parts. I'm going to be reading 3 books in this vlog and 3 books in the next vlog, which I hope will come out around October time. I didn't want to read too many and overwhelm myself because I do also have my fictionary TBR, of which I've managed to get a couple of these books onto, but others I've had to just add in separately. So I am hoping that 3 is like a decent amount to be able to read because I have 2 weeks as of filming this to read these books before this video is meant to go live. So let's get into the challenge. So I've contacted 6 booktube friends to ask them for their least favourite books. Now I got lists from all of them and it was very interesting seeing what people's least favourite books are. I especially saw a couple on there that I really enjoyed, so I am definitely intrigued to see how I find the books that I have picked from those lists. But my logic when picking, I picked one from each booktuber, was whether it was something I owned and had plans to read anyway, whether it was on my TBR, whether it's something that I was vaguely interested in but hadn't owned a copy of or had seen about the place. I kind of just picked the ones I gravitated towards because I thought that might give me some sort of a boost to potentially enjoying them, because obviously I don't want to necessarily dislike these books. I don't want to dislike any book, but I'm really intrigued to see how I find these when booktube friends haven't enjoyed them. So I'm going to tell you what books are going to be on the list. These are going to be the first 3 that I am going to read in September. So first up, I have got Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nagan. This was one I already owned, but I hadn't really put it on a TBR or anything. It was just kind of one that I owned and was on my shelf unread. This is a YA fantasy that follows our main character who has been selected to become one of the paper girls for the king. Basically that means that she is a concubine for him, and it sounds like there is sexual abuse involved in that and it's not a very pleasant position to be in. She's ripped away from her family. I think there might be something a little bit different about her that makes her our unique YA heroine that we're going to follow that's, I assume, going to break some kind of mould here. I am very intrigued to see the direction this one takes and why this would have been on a least favourite list, because I have actually started this one today for the first day of this vlog, and so far I am understanding why it might be on a least favourite list, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So that is the first book I will be reading, and that was picked for me by Ro from Wandering Through Worlds. So that is a book on her least favourite books list. Very intrigued to hear why once I finish it as well. But yeah, as I said, that's one I've currently started, so I will talk to you about that once I've introduced the other 2 books as well. Then we have got Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Now this is a film I have seen, but I have never read the book. But I really, really enjoy Neil Gaiman's writing. I've read other books by him and I've loved everything he's written so far. So I'm very intrigued to see this one on someone's least favourite list, and I'm very intrigued to see how I find my reading experience with this, because I know Neil Gaiman is an author I enjoy the writing style of, and I already do know the story of this. I'm familiar with what happens here, although I assume the book is going to be slightly different. So this, from my knowledge at the moment, follows Tristan, who really loves this woman in his village called Victoria, and he decides that to win her heart, or she's told him to win her heart, she needs a fallen star. So he goes about finding this fallen star and ends up going on a journey that is much wider than that with this star to bring the star back to Victoria. And the star is personified, and if you've seen the film you'll know all this story, but like it's all about the journey of other people wanting the star as well. So from this I'm expecting something quite whimsical and magical, although it is incredibly short. I think this is probably under 250 pages? Yeah, this is under 250 pages, so it is pretty short. I hope that this one will be quite a quick one for me to read and make this a little bit less of a daunting addition to my already rather large fictionary TBR, but I am really excited to read this one because whilst I have bought a copy especially for this video, I have wanted to own a copy for a while and wanted to add this one to my wish list. I am a little bit dubious because normally when I've watched a film I'm not as interested to read the book, because for me I love reading the book first and getting the story raw from the book and having that as the foundation of my knowledge for the plot. I don't necessarily like it the other way around, so I'm intrigued. Also, I'm a little bit bitter that this cover is not going to be matching the other Neil Gaiman covers I have, but that's my fault for not buying it sooner. So that book is a least favourite from Maddie from Book Browsing blog. So again, I'm very intrigued to see why she didn't like it and see what my own reading experience will be. And lastly, I have got Law by Alexandra Bracken. This is one that I have been wanting to read ever since this beautiful Fairy Loot edition arrived at some point this year. I can't remember when, but clearly I've been putting this one off, so this was a great excuse to read this one. This is Greek mythology inspired, and it follows the Greek gods who come down to Earth every 7 years, I think it is, to take part in this revenge type of game thing where Zeus is making them go there as a punishment, and they can be hunted whilst they're on Earth. And this follows our one main character who I think has a bit of a bone to pick with them and the journey that she goes on there. So I am expecting this to be quite fun and action-packed, but there is obviously a reason that this booktuber picked it as their least favourite book, or one of their least favourite books to add to a list for me. So I am very interested to see whether this lives up to my expectations, because I've heard really good things about this. I have been told this is a fantastic audiobook, so I may pick this one up on audio as well as reading alongside it, because everyone in my TBR said how good the audiobook was. So maybe that'll help me enjoy it. I don't know, but this is my final and third book of my vlog for part 1 of reading BookTuber's least favourite books. And this one was, again, recommended / not recommended by Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, who says it is one that she really didn't enjoy. So again, very interested to see whether my views match Ashley's or whether we have differing views on this one. So those are the 3 books for part 1 of reading BookTuber's least favourite books. I'm going to be updating you as I go through the reading process, what my thoughts are, what I'm kind of feeling, whether I agree or disagree with people's opinions on these books. As it stands at the moment, my current prediction is I'm going to dislike Girls of Paper and Fire. I'm gonna like Stardust but not be completely thrilled because I've already watched the film and I kind of know the story. And Law, I feel like I might feel kind of average about. Those are my predictions at the moment. But as I said, I have already started Girls of Paper and Fire, so I feel like my prediction there might be slightly swayed. So I started this one today, and so far I am only 30 pages in, but we have already really quickly established everything about the story up until the point where this girl is taken to be with the king, and I felt like that was done way too fast and info dumpy for me to properly process it. I am normally someone that doesn't really like a stretched out introduction. I'm very happy to have fast paced and to be thrown immediately into the action, but I think it needs to be done in a way where you still care about the characters, you care about the family, the setting, what's happening with their situation, whereas I didn't really feel like we had enough time to grow that attachment to our main character, and immediately she's kind of taken away from that environment, and we're meant to feel that emotion with her of the fear and the sadness that she's being taken away from her family. But I didn't really get that because I felt like I didn't have enough time to connect to her, and it just seems to be very like snap, snap, snap onto the next thing and a little rushed at the moment. So far I can kind of see why this might have ended up on a least favourite list from Ro, but I am going to keep reading it, keep seeing my thoughts develop and change hopefully, and give it a little bit more time to get going, because as I said, I am only 30 pages in at the moment, so I'm intrigued to see how this one changes and whether it's going to change my mind. But yeah, this is the one I am entering into the vlog with, but I will let you know my thoughts and feelings when I'm further in. Hello! So, when I last spoke to you, I had just started this book. Now I have finished it and I have some thoughts and feelings and I want to discuss them with you. So obviously this is the first book I'm reading of books that booktubers didn't like, and this book was picked for me by Ro, who did not like it. And I have spoken with Ro and we've discussed what there was to dislike and what there was to like about this book, and honestly our views align with the things that I also disliked about this book. So what I will say is I started off feeling pretty meh towards it. As I said at the start of this video, it seemed to just jump in and I didn't really feel like there was a connection that I had with the characters. In the middle, I was kind of thinking, where is this going? What is the plot? At the end, I felt like I was a little bit more engaged, but at the same time, the plot still seemed to be this really loose thing I was desperately trying to grasp hold of. So I think to start with, I would say that for me, the plot just seemed to be all over the place or not engaging enough. Essentially, we are seeing these girls on this path of not wanting to be sexually abused by the king. We're seeing the king being a mean guy and being the villain because he sexually abuses these girls, but we don't really see much more about the king and grab any more information as to what makes him villainous. Like, there's kind of a couple of things mentioned where you think he might be redeemed and you're unsure as to what kind of a role he's going to play and whether he would actually be a good guy, and perhaps everything we've heard about him isn't actually true and it's all a facade. And I kind of, that stuff that went through my brain at one point or another as to what he was actually doing with these women. And yeah, I had so many different thoughts throughout, but at the end of the book I just kind of felt he was the villain, but he wasn't, we didn't have enough detail about him to really build any sort of characterization other than the fact that he was a bastard because he was sexually abusing these girls. So obviously that's enough to make somebody a villain figure, but I felt like I needed to know more about him as a ruler and what he was like with his people, as well as what his kind of goals were and what his backstory was. I just wanted to have a bit more of a grasp on him to make him seem a little bit more lucid for me. So it fell a little bit flat there, and also with the plot, because it did just feel like it was one girl's journey to not being sexually abused by him. And whilst that is a very valid journey to follow, it did at times feel like it was really stretched out, and like we were not really getting anything other than following that one single goal. There wasn't anything else really happening, because there was kind of a romance emerging, but it wasn't really brewing until like the last 100 to 150 pages. So I think generally I just wanted a bit more from it, is what I would say. And what I did really enjoy was the setting and the atmosphere. This book actually has a map at the front of it that gives us an indication as to the layout. So I felt like I had a really good image in my head as to how this would all work, and the kind of daily routine that these girls had, and the lessons they went to, and the way that they interacted with each other, I think all clubbed together to create a very intriguing atmosphere, and something that I did really enjoy reading, and I enjoyed the way that that was written. So I think for me, I could very clearly see the characters in these pages, like walking around the halls and in their rooms and interacting with each other. I could see that because I felt like the atmosphere itself was very visual, and that was really good, because I think with the plot being more stretched out and with this being a slower book, I think I needed that to be able to offer me like other things I would want from a story. I think when I read a book, I'm either going to want something that's really beautiful, really atmospheric, makes me feel certain emotions and feelings. I'm really sorry if you can hear the traffic loud, it is so hot and I've got the doors open and something loud just drove past. Anyway, or I want something really fast paced and really action heavy where the plot is just moving on to the next point constantly. So I think it did more of the first thing on delivery, but overall I have given this 3 out of 5 stars because, as I said, it was pretty average, but to be honest, that is more than I thought I would give it. I can see why Ro said this is a least favourite. I can see that. I think it could be fairly forgettable, and if you ask me for the details of the plot, I don't know if I'd be able to give them to you other than the relationships of the characters, which again is something I think worked quite well. But yeah, I just felt a little bit bored throughout. But I did keep picking it up, so it didn't make me think, oh, I don't want to read it. I just probably won't continue on with this series. So I am glad I've read this, because this was on my TBR for a while. It was interesting to read it and then discuss with Ro afterwards what we both disliked about it. I think it just was trying to get somewhere and it didn't quite get there, personally for me. If other people have read this and felt like it did do something different for them, that is absolutely fine. This is just my own personal opinions. Also, what I did really enjoy is that right at the start of this, we put an author's note, so just literally the page before the map is introduced, so it's quite easy to come across this before you start reading. There is an author's note, obviously from the author, that says what this story was inspired by. So it says, the world of Ikara has been heavily inspired by growing up in Malaysia, a country with a dense mix of cultures, and also by my identity as a person of mixed ethnicity. As such, it's a hybrid like me. I feel extremely lucky to have come from a multicultural home. It has shaped my influences and perspectives and will forever continue to do so. And then it talks about the concept behind the book. It also goes on to say how this represents many women's experiences, not being positive experiences, and the very real reality of what can happen to some women, unfortunately. So I think it would be wrong of me not to mention that, because obviously this is a book that is a YA, fiction, fantasy, but it's grounded in something that is reality, and I think you've got to notice that when reading this book, that this is fictional, yes, but it is based on things that have actually been happening and happen in this world. So that is really important, and I don't want to diminish any of that by saying that I found the plot slower, because that side of things is still very much important and is still really prevalent. Like throughout this whole book, there is the prevalence of the pain and the abuse that these women have to go through and how horrendous that is and how terrified they all are. And I think, as I said, the characters and the relationships were what kept me engaged with this, as well as the atmosphere. So I did find their journey very emotional when you see, I don't want to give any spoilers, but when you see how what they have to do affects them and the aftermath of it, it's definitely quite gut-wrenching. I think it would be difficult as a human being to not read that and feel something absolutely horrendous for these poor girls. So those are my thoughts on Girls of Paper and Fire. You can probably tell from this spiel that I am a little bit torn, which is why it's got 3 stars. That is a pretty average rating for me. It's what I give a book when I can't really decide whether I want to absolutely love it or it annoys me too much. It's kind of a really decent middle ground. So yes, it had its merits. Yes, it had its flaws. I'm just gonna stick it in 3 stars. So that was book 1 of the challenge, which means I'm now moving on to book 2, which is Law by Alexandra Bracken. I did start that vaguely today. I'm gonna be reading that and listening to the audiobook alongside it. And so far, I'm kind of enjoying it. I am intrigued, again, entering this one to see what Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction didn't like about it. But at the moment, I have no issues, but I am literally 2 chapters in, so we will see. Hello, one thing I forgot to mention when talking about Girls of Paper and Fire that I just wanted to add on to the end, I completely forgot about it until I was editing my weekly vlog, and I just spoke about it there, was the fact that this book talked about challenging the norms, and I really liked that. Through our main character, we definitely saw my body, my choice, and the fact that this has always been done and having these paper girls for the king, but why does that mean it should be done? And like challenging the fact that just because it's always been the way it has been, why does that mean it's how it needs to continue? And I thought that that was very powerfully done as well, and I didn't want to not mention that. So just a little insert there from editing Beth from my weekly vlog, reminding me to put that into this vlog, so cross-vlogging win! Hi, it has been a hot second since I've updated you on Law. I feel like it's taken me forever to read this book and I'm not even finished yet. I have got this much left, which is really not much at all, but I was very tired last night and just didn't manage to finish it. So yeah, my thoughts on this book so far, because we haven't spoken since I had just started it. So I can see why Ashley would have put this on a least favourite list. I think there is so much that Alexandra Bracken is trying to put in here that it's overwhelming for me personally. I don't know whether that's the reason that Ashley didn't like it. I haven't asked her yet. I will ask her when she's finished. But I'm finding it when I finished, obviously she's already read it when I finished. I am finding it there's just so much. And I think what Alexandra Bracken has done really well in the past for me is the way she's interwoven historical events and the way she's interwoven her facts into her story so well that it didn't feel like I was receiving a history lesson. It felt like I was just reading a really good bit of fiction. And she has done the same thing here. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a lesson on Greek mythology, but it's almost like she's trying to include all of it in there, whereas maybe just a section should have been taken. There is so much to establish here with the characters and the lore and what is actually happening in this plot that I've just felt lost for a good part of the book. I think I've just managed to regain it towards the end because everything's coming to fruition and we're seeing the journey that these characters have been on kind of have some kind of a conclusion. And I have really enjoyed seeing the different way this approaches Greek mythology by the fact that if you kill a god during the Agon and during this every 7 years they're mortal again, then you take on that god's powers. And I do think that gives it a different dynamic. However, there's even more characters to remember because now the god you thought you knew have actually been killed, someone's taken on their power and given themselves a new name, and it's just more to remember. So there's just a lot going on, but I'm gonna finish it and I will let you know when I've done that and what my thoughts are. Hello, I have finally finished Law by Alexandra Bracken and I feel disappointed. I feel disappointed. I mean, for the sake of this being a video where I read BookTuber's least favourite books, I suppose I'm not that disappointed because I went into this knowing it was someone's least favourite, but I just felt like I really hoped it would redeem itself because I loved The Passenger Duology, The Passenger Duology by Alexandra Bracken, and I just was really, really hoping for this one, but I read this because it was Ashley from A Frolic Through Fictions, one of her least favourite books, and I've spoken to her about why, and we pretty much agree on the pacing being incredibly fast. And Ashley also said that she didn't really care about the romance or the characters, and I do agree, the romance felt very, very easy in a way that I kind of wanted a bit more tension from it almost. I don't need that in a romance necessarily, but it felt like it needed it in this book, so I would agree with what Ashley says there. And generally everything I've said prior as well still stands. This tried to achieve a lot and almost put too much in the pages. I think it just felt a bit lost on me. So unfortunately I didn't love this as much as I hoped, but I did give it 3 stars. So it was an average read for me, but just, yeah, it felt too lost. If there was any more written within this series, I don't know if it's a standalone or a series, I probably won't pick them up. And now I can say that I've read it, so yay. And it is onwards to my next read, which is going to be Stardust by Neil Gaiman. So I will let you know what I think of that once I start it. Hello, I have come with my final update to this video. I feel like this video's been a journey. I'm making this over the course of about a month really, and this is my final update because I finished the 3rd book that I was going to read. So that book was Stardust by Neil Gaiman, and this was Maddie from Book Browsing Blog's least favourite pick. I'm realising now as I'm filming this I haven't actually asked Maddie what she didn't like about this book, whereas I asked both Ashley and Ro what they didn't like about their books, so I faux pas there. Okay, I've just messaged Maddie to ask her what she disliked about the book, so I probably will do another update. I lied when I said this was my final update, but I really liked this. This came out as 4 stars. I thought it was a fantastic fairy tale for adults. The characters were very unique and really had their own little personality quirks that fit so perfectly into the fairy tale category genre, and I just absolutely loved reading about them. I also really enjoyed the division that we have between Victorian England and then this world of fairy beyond the wall, and the type of magic that we have taking place over there. If you aren't familiar with what this book is about, it follows Tristan, who has been told by the woman he loves she will marry him if he goes and finds her a star. The star turns out to actually be a person, and he has to go on a journey of bringing the star back to the woman he loves whilst also trying to avoid all the other people that were also after the star for various reasons. Having watched the film first before reading this book, I went into it knowing what the story would be like and wondering if this would be different from the film. And I will say that this is very, very similar. There are 2 specific parts I can think of that are a lot more embellished in the film than they are in the book. Those being the scene with the sky pirates. There's way more to that in the film, which I really enjoyed. So it was kind of sad that that wasn't in the book, but glad that it was in the film. And then also near the end there is a scene with the witches. I'm trying to keep this really vague, so if you haven't read it or watched it this won't be spoiling it, but there is a scene with these witches in the film that is a really big scene in the film and doesn't appear in the books, so that's interesting as well, seeing those crossovers. But before going into this knowing the story, knowing the plot, I still really, really enjoyed it. I ended up actually listening to this as an audiobook alongside physically reading it. I don't need to be holding it up anymore. Yeah, so I listened to the audiobook as well as physically read it. And the audiobook is actually narrated by Neil Gaiman, who's the author of the book. And that was so brilliant. There was actually a talk afterwards on the audiobook with him and somebody that was interviewing him, talking about the book and his writing and why he liked recording his own audiobooks, and like he was saying that it's him reading the story as he meant it to be written, and whilst we all interpret the stories differently, it's his way of kind of putting his stamp on the audiobook, which is really nice. And it was a really good interview actually. I would highly advise listening to it, but it's such a good audiobook. You can really feel each character being done differently, and yeah, I just think as a fairy tale for adults this worked perfectly, and that is exactly what it said it wanted to be. It wanted to be a story for adults to be able to fall into, and it totally did that. There was a lot in it that actually made me feel reminiscent of Tolkien books, because they like particularly characters, like there was this hairy old man described as in Stardust that really reminded me of Tom Bombadil in certain aspects, except he was a lot less annoying than Tom Bombadil, but they certainly had some traits where I thought they kind of overlapped with each other, which was really cool, and I enjoyed seeing that kind of reflection of familiarity in the way the characters spoke and stuff that really gave me Tolkien vibes. I've always loved Neil Gaiman's writing ever since I read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, so I think really I should have expected this one to be one I would have enjoyed more, because I think I said at the start of this video that I wouldn't enjoy it because I'd watched the film, and whilst I think that did change my enjoyment of it. I really liked it, and I think because there's so much going on in such a short amount of time, like there's a lot happening in 216 pages, I think maybe watching the film helped guide me through that so I wasn't lost. Generally, it ticked many of my boxes. I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I am intrigued to see what Maddie disliked about it. So I think due to my lack of planning when turning on my camera to film this update, I'm gonna have to speak to you again with one final update with what Maddie disliked about this book, because I'm really intrigued to see for this one, because I didn't dislike it, I want to see what there is to pull out of it to dislike. So I will let you know what that update is later, and that'll be when I round up the video as well. Hello, I have come back many hours later. Maddie has replied to me and let me know what it was she didn't like about Stardust, so I'm here with my final update of the video. It's quite dark at the moment, so I'm really worried that the focus might be crap here, but we'll give it a go. So I asked Maddie what it was she disliked about Stardust, and she basically said it was the pacing. She said for the first 20 pages she felt like she was really hooked and she thought it was really good, and then it slowed down for her and she didn't really feel like she cared about it, and she didn't like the main characters. So I thought that was quite interesting, because actually maybe that's a problem I alleviated for myself by listening to the audiobook, because the pacing I felt was quite decent, but probably because of the way it was narrated. So that is interesting, and I think maybe I saved my reading experience in a way by listening to the audiobook. So if you have a kind of feeling that maybe listening to an audiobook would be a good option for you, do it, because that is the vibe I got with this book, and it worked, because I think I was worried going into it that the pacing would be funny, but then also so much happens in such a short amount of time that it is fast. I suppose it's just kind of told in a way that can feel slower, if that makes any sort of sense. I don't know, but that is good to know what Maddie's perspective is and why she didn't like it versus why I did like it, I suppose. So yeah, I really enjoyed that reading experience. That was a really good one to read. Maddie said she's glad I did like it, so that's good. I'm glad that her influence there got me to read it, so yay. So yeah, that is it for this video. This is part 1 of 2. Part 2 will be coming around November time, depending on when I can fit it into my video plan, and also I suppose when I can read the books. But I do hope you enjoyed this one. I have got the next 3 books lined up ready to read as well, so I'm excited to give those a go. It's been fun to film, it's been fun. I was editing some clips earlier and I noticed like how different the weather has been from the start. Like at the start I'm really hot and I'm in like a t-shirt, and now I'm in a jumper and I'm kind of cold, and it's now becoming autumn, so it's been kind of funny to see that transition as well. But I hope you have enjoyed watching. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my opinions on these books. Also, just a reminder that if other people do not like books, they may be your favourite books. I'm always wary when I make videos about books and not specifically liking them, although I suppose I've been kind of average about 2 of the books in this video, that people will think, oh, I won't bother to read it then. But, you know, like, you might love it. You might absolutely love it. I know sometimes when you've got really similar reading tastes to someone else, it might put you off a book, and I certainly do that myself. But if you thought you might enjoy Girls of Paper and Fire and I said I didn't like it, it may be your jam. I mean, I did kind of like it. I still don't know about that one. That one I'm still 50-50 on. So yeah, we're at Girls of Paper and Fire, still don't really know. Law, definitely not my favourite thing ever, and Stardust, a surprising, enjoyable read. So those are my 3 books that I've read. Thank you so much to Maddie, to Ashley and to Ro for participating in this video and giving me your least favourite books to read. Thank you for pushing my reading taste a little bit to read some other books that I might not necessarily have picked up. Thank you to you guys for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, comment down below what your least favourite books are or what you thought of these books if you've read them, and subscribe to see more of my face on your feed. You can also get extra content from me down below on my Patreon. That includes things like a Discord chat, a book club, a special podcast where I do certain things each month like recommendations and just general chit chats. There's special live shows, dedicated reading vlogs, all sorts of fun things, all linked down below. Thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling and stay positive. And also stay tuned for part 2.